Welcome back to TFL. I know it's been a minute, but we're back, and we've got some drama, controversy here already in week one. Only one game has been played, but we're going to jump right into the Spitgate here between Dak and Jalen. So let's get into it. Also, before we dive into it, if you're new, if you want to support the channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. I really appreciate it. I have also got some gear in my TikTok shop, so if you want some new gear, shirts, prints, things like that, I'll drop the link to my TikTok shop in there so you guys can check it out. But let's get into week one here.
And Chris, that other angle showed us that the umpire was looking back towards the Cowboys huddle and saw that, and then was watching the rest of the confrontation. Remember, there was an Eagles player, their fullback, for a snap. Chris, that's, first of all, I got the 5-yard line.
Conduct. Defense number 98. Number 98's defense actions has disqualified him from the game.
Whoa.
15-yard penalty.
Whoa.
Okay, so I'm gonna drop the video, or I'll throw it up here so you guys can see it. But everyone has pretty much seen it, so they already know what we're gonna talk about. But this shows the angle of, Dak spitting first towards Jalen, and then they jaw back and forth a little, and Jalen spits right on Dak, gets ejected before they even play one snap. It's tough for Jalen and Dak just to watch that. They're both NFL stars, so something like that seems more of like a high school type of deal there, but it was a big loss for the Eagles. It's a very avoidable thing. It's unfortunate that it happened, but it did. Honestly, in my opinion, I think if Jalen gets suspended by the NFL or fined, I think Dak also should have that same suspension or fine, because it goes both ways. Unfortunately, the second guy is always the one who gets caught. And from this video, it very much looks like Dak was the one who spit towards Jalen, and then Jalen took that personally and got in his face and then actually spit on Dak. But again, you can see it in the video, so it's kind of like one of those things that if the NFL does one thing to Jalen, I think they need to do that same thing to Dak, because he's the one who looks like initiated it. He said he spits 1,000 times during a game, and he didn't want to spit on his offensive lineman, and so he just spit, and it happened to be towards the Eagles' best defensive player, and which I'm not really buying that, because he didn't even look down or anything. He just looked straight at him and spit. And honestly, it's just kind of crazy that this really is a thing that we're already discussing in week one of the NFL. It was a great game. Unfortunately, there was a weather delay, and I didn't get to see the other half or quarter of it. But you can tell the Eagles were struggling defensively with not having Jalen Carter, but they held the Cowboys off. They were able to win. CD dropped some passes that he probably should have caught. I think if he would have made those catches, we would have been talking about a Cowboys win, and how much Jalen Carter's, suspension or whatever, or ejection affected the Eagles' defense, which it did because he's their best guy defensively. They don't have him. Their defensive line struggles, just defense all around struggles. But yeah, so that's kind of that. There's a lot of different things that happen there. I really think, again, that, if the NFL comes down with something on Jalen Carter, they need to have the same thing for Dak, too, because he, again, was a part of it. They were both jawing back and forth, and he spit first, so, and we have video of it. So, there's no way to get around that except for him trying to say, I spit 1,000 times during a game, didn't want to spit on my lineman, so he spit forward or whatever, and it was towards Carter. You can drop your thoughts down there, what you think, but I don't really buy that. Yeah, so that's kind of all for that. That was pretty exciting, again, right away. It was a good game. It was fun to watch, especially gets me hyped for, Sunday, which is today. So there's going to be a lot more action. But we have college football to talk about. Week 2, kind of talk about week 1. Some coaches who I think are on the hot seat. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to turn over to college football here. Yesterday was Saturday, so week 2 just happened. But I kind of want to discuss some guys that I think are on the hot seat. One is Billy Napier, obviously. A field goal loss to South Florida. Doesn't look good. He's struggled throughout his tenure at Florida. I think this season is his last go. That USF loss does not look good for him. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow, they say, you're done, pack your stuff. It's hard to say. But that's one guy that I think is probably on the hot seat. If they, maybe they let him keep going. Just USF looks like a really good team. They took care of already 2 top 25 teams. Boise State last week, they dominated them. And then they went to the Swamp and they beat Florida by a field goal. I think they can be the one of the, what they call it, G5, group of 5 teams that gets into the playoff. If they can continue their winning ways. It's only week 2, so I wouldn't be shocked if USF is in it this year, but we'll have to wait and see. I think Billy Napier is very much fired unless he can, win out. And Florida's got a tough schedule. Honestly, I'll just pull it up because I'm not even for sure who they play, but we'll look at it right now. They lost, 18-16, and then they still have, let's see, they're 1-1. They have LSU, then Miami, Texas A&M, Mississippi State. Then Mississippi State upset Arizona State, Georgia, Kentucky, Ole Miss, Tennessee. Yeah, they're fucked. Okay, so Billy Napier is probably very much fired. That's one of the toughest schedules, in the SEC, I would say. So it's hard to, rattle off like 10 wins or whatever he would need to do to save his job. I really don't think he'll be the head coach at Florida for very, very much longer. Yeah. So that's one coach that I very much see losing his job. And then the other coach, Kalen DeBoer, everybody saw that loss against Florida State. Florida State looks like a really good team this year. But still, Alabama's ranked in the top 10, which I don't even know why they're in the top 10 to start the season. They had 9 wins last year, I believe. Missed the playoff. Not an Alabama thing to do. We're all used to them winning a national championship, or competing for national championships, being in the playoff, only having maybe 1 or 2 losses. But, Kalen DeBoer, he's struggling. I think if, they lose a couple more games, he's definitely done. They talk about how big his buyout is, but, I don't think Alabama cares. Well, they probably do, but, they want to win. They care more about winning than probably paying somebody who's not coaching there anymore. He was supposed to replace Nick Saban and continue Nick Saban's winning ways, and he has yet to do that. I know this is only year 2. Yeah, year 2, and we're only just getting done with week 2. But this is something to discuss and figure out if we all think he's going to have a job by November. Personally, I'm not sure that he will, especially if, they have a couple more tough losses. Again, I'll just pull up Alabama's schedule here. Hold on just a second. They did win 73-0, but that was against Louisiana Monroe, so that really doesn't count for anything. Looks like they have Wisconsin next. Truthfully, they should be able to handle Wisconsin. No problem. Wisconsin is not good. Again, another coach who I think is probably on the hot seat, Luke Fickell there in Wisconsin, has not had very much success. A lot of guys transfer, but, that's kind of besides the point. We're talking about Kalen DeBoer here. Then they have Georgia, Vanderbilt, Missouri, Tennessee, South Carolina, LSU, Oklahoma, Eastern Illinois, and then Auburn. Losses, I can see Georgia, Missouri, they played really well against Kansas yesterday. Tennessee, they're a good team. South Carolina, they're a really good team. So LSU going to be competing for the national championship. Oklahoma looked good last night against Michigan. There's opportunities for quite a few losses here. If Alabama and Kalen DeBoer don't figure it out, I again don't think that Alabama cares how much his buyout is. They care more about competing for national championships. But maybe if he goes 9-3 or 10-2, maybe they'll keep him around for another year, give him 3 years to figure it out. I don't really see that happening, especially for Alabama. You can drop your thoughts down in the comments there, what you think, if Kalen DeBoer is going to have a job, or, Billy Napier is going to get fired. Yeah, those are kind of the coaches that I see being on the hot seat here. So, moving on, we'll move into kind of a debate segment. The question is whether or not an offensive coordinator or defensive coordinators make for better head coaches. I personally think offensive guys you usually see being more of successful head coaches. Drop your thoughts down there. Who you think makes for better head coaches? I guess we'll get a good example of like either if Ben Johnson has more success or Aaron Glenn, I believe is his name, for the Jets. They both come from the Lions, have had a lot of success for being an offense and defense coordinator. You can talk about Sean McVay being an offensive coordinator, or Mike Tomlin being a defensive guy and being a successful head coach. Those are a few guys or names that come to mind. But again, drop your thoughts down in the comments whether you think an offense or defense coordinator makes for a better head coach. Then moving on to week one here with my NFL picks. I'm going to pick some teams who I think are going to win, but we'll see who comes out on top. Okay, so we're going to do my picks for NFL week one. I'm just going to go through, the slate of week one here. The first game that's here is Dolphins-Colts. I'm going to say that the Dolphins will take care of the Colts. I think, the Colts quarterback struggle is a glaring problem there. I think the Dolphins will be okay. Moving on to another game here is Steelers-Jets. Jets, a poverty franchise in the NFL. Sorry, Jets fans, but, the quarterback situation, the revolving door of head coaches. I think just the Steelers with Aaron Rodgers, even though he's getting older, he's also still a very good quarterback. I think the Steelers will handle that just fine. A game that will be kind of interesting with Travis Hunter. I think I saw him. He's starting receiver, Panthers, Jags. I think with the Panthers finding a little success towards the end of last year, I think that'll carry into this season. So I'm going to take the Panthers. The Jaguars, new head coach. They're going to struggle. I don't think they'll be very good. But I'm taking the Panthers. Moving on to Cardinals-Saints. Saints are going to be really bad. Quarterback problems. Cardinals will handle that just fine. Interesting one here. Giants, Commanders. I think, the Commanders, they were in the NFC Championship last year. I think they'll find themselves there again this season. But one thing that's interesting to me is whether or not, why Jackson Dart isn't starting. He had a great preseason. I know everybody's going to be like, it's just preseason, so that doesn't really mean much, but still, you're either going to start Russell Wilson, who's aging, or Jameis Winston, who throws 30 interceptions. I don't know why you wouldn't want to start the rookie and see what you have there. You've already seen it a little bit in the preseason. I think they should carry the success that he's had in the preseason into the regular season, but they're not going to. Giants fans, you can comment and whether or not you think Jackson should start or not, to me, I think he should. You got jobs on the line here. You drafted him. You might as well give him a start. I guess, you could also say if he struggles, that ruins confidence. And then it's hard to figure that out, especially if he's struggling. But, I don't see him struggling too much. You learn best from playing. So I don't know how many wins either Jameis Winston or Russell Wilson can get you. You really gotta. Personally, I think you would have to give Jackson Dart the start, but I guess not. I'm not a head coach, so I can't say. But that's just my take. I'm taking the Commanders over the Giants. Moving on to Buccaneers and Falcons. I'm taking Tampa Bay. Their defense is always good. Baker looks better since he's come to Tampa Bay. I'm taking the Buccaneers over the Falcons. Moving on to the Browns Bengals. The last few years, the Bengals have struggled the first few games, but the Browns, again, kind of another poverty franchise. They've got Joe Flacco starting. I don't understand how they can't find a decent quarterback in the draft. They drafted two of them this past year, and neither of one of them looked very good. So they're going with Joe Flacco. So I'm taking Joe Burrow and the Bengals. So moving on to Raiders Patriots. New coach Pete Carroll in Las Vegas. He's got Geno Smith, who looks pretty good. I'll take the Raiders. I think the Raiders over the Patriots. Mike Vrabel's first year in New England. I'm taking the Raiders. Moving on to the later games here this afternoon. The 49ers Seahawks. Kind of a tough one, but gonna take the 49ers. I know Christian McCaffrey is out, but still they got other weapons on the offense. They struggled at last year with injuries. I think they'll get back to the playoffs. They're a good team. I like Brock Purdy and the 49ers. Moving on to the Titans. Broncos. Bo Nix. If you look at a couple of my older videos for a few years ago, I said Bo Nix is going to be a good quarterback. I think the Broncos are going to compete for first in the AFC West. The Chiefs kind of struggled Friday against the Chargers. They lost, but I think the Broncos are going to be good. So I'm taking the Broncos. Titans, they're going to be bad. So win for the Broncos. Packers Lions, kind of a tough one. They just got Mike Parsons last Thursday. The Lions have lost both their coordinators, so I'm going to take the Packers. That should be a good game. I'll be excited for that game. I think that one will be a good one, but I'm going to take the Packers. Moving on, Texans Rams. Matthew Stafford's been out this offseason and preseason with back issues. Hasn't practiced much, or they've been kind of taking it easy. So I'm going to take the Texans. I think the Texans will be competing in the AFC South. I think they'll take the AFC South. AFC South isn't great. The Texans are a good team. CJ Stroud is good. Their defense is good. He's got tons of weapons. So I'm taking the Texans. Sunday night game, Ravens-Bills. Could be a preview of the AFC Championship. MVP Josh Allen versus former MVP Lamar Jackson. Should be a really good one. Honestly, I want to say the Bills, but I'm going to go ahead and take the Ravens just because, they've got the defense. They got Lamar, who can throw and run and do all the things. Josh Allen can do the same thing, but I'm taking the Ravens. And then Monday night, Vikings-Bears. Ben Johnson's first regular season game. J.J. McCarthy's first start. Taking the Bears. Gotta take the Bears in hopes that they can at least rattle off like 10 wins and we can see some strong improvement. This is probably the most hyped I've been for the Bears in a long time, so I'm taking the Bears. You can say whatever you want down in the comments about Caleb Williams. He gets a lot of hate, but they just hate us because they hate us. Taking the Bears. I think J.J. McCarthy will be a bust. That's probably going to be a horrible take, but you know what? I'm saying it. Bears win. J.J. McCarthy's a bust. And, that's all I have for this video. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. I appreciate it. Also, please comment. I like the interaction, so please feel free to comment, and I will see you guys in the next one.